And we'll just come into the breath together, breathing toward the one. Let's say the invocation. Toward the one, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the Spirit of guidance. And the Bismillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm going to present just one lesson from Hazrat Khan to begin with, from the Gita's on psychology, by which he means also psychic power and the development of that. In the circles of psychical research, there's been talk of Ismi Azam, the mysterious word, since thousands of years, and no one so far has been able to point out what this Ismi Azam may be. In my conception, every word is Ismi Azam when it is worked by a master mind. The older the language, the purer are its words. Plainly speaking, the words are uncorrupted, or at least but little corrupted. The reason why an uncorrupted word, that is to say a psychic word, has a psychic power is that every word in its origin is the pure offspring of the heart and is all-powerful, while by corruption the brain and tongue have changed and ruined it, and it has lost its power in proportion. Besides the words from the original languages, there are other powerful words spoken by the Sahib-i-Dil, the illuminated hearts, who possess divine power within them. Such are the words of great teachers, of prophets and murshids, and the words spoken by them in ecstasy are especially psychic. The wise, therefore, sincerely speak good words and avoid even hearing bad words from another. The words of sufferers of any sort and of the illuminated and lovers and devotees are always powerful. The words of sufferers of any sort and those of the illuminated and lovers and devotees are always powerful. The word who is the only word which can be undeniably realized as the sole word of mystery. No lips of any living being fail to utter it, nor is it left unexpressed in sounds of any description. The word who is the only word which signifies the pure being of God, free from all distinctive aspects, attributes, and adjectives, and which is as gold for spiritual wealth. Besides this, there are 99 names of the different aspects of divine attributes and power. The invocation of each name brings to a sincere and persevering heart the bliss of that particular attribute and power, which once awakened within them kindles the same in everything in their life. So this is just background for our work, because we're working a lot with who in our practice, and I want us to later on today we'll take some opportunity to really go into a deep meditation, hearing the who sound of our breath, and then moving from there into Akhlaq Allah practice. And also I wanted to bring up just how strongly Hazrat Khan presents the wazifas and their power. Because as we work with this tool of the breath is such an extraordinary way for us to awaken the qualities that we need in our life. And this brings me really, what reminded me of doing this first was a letter I got from somebody who wasn't able to come today, but because I knew we were going to be going into our journals, today, which I want to go into, or if people didn't bring a journal to read from or a journal entry to read from or remember, then, just to speak something from what you have, insights that you have gotten in doing these breath practices now for 6 months. And working with the breath in the way that we've been doing, so there, and then we can go from there at a certain point in our work today, because I want today to be very collaborative. We're a smaller group for reasons of, summer seasons and the like, and so I think we'll have more time to do more kind of intimate stuff, moving and the like. And part of what we would want to explore at that time is the quality that you need to work with in your life, that you need to enhance, that you need to further awaken, or the quality that is so there for you that it is a perfection that you can just walk through. Because these are the two main ways to work with the qualities. But I just wanted to put this in the context of things. Of course, it's quite humorous. He says, no one can say this, and then he says, who is the sound? But the word, this comes, you might say it's only because if you can say it's the sound of the silence. You see, when you go into the practice of Chagall, and which we will start doing some aspects of here this week, you are really going to the root of all the senses. And by taking your attention from being extended like this through the senses and drawing them back to their root center into the spaciousness of the inner world, one finds in that emptiness illumination, the light that is that fills that space, that permeates it, and also the sound that permeates the whole of everything. And that sound, the Sufi, that ooh, hoo, ha, he, that sound of the vowel sound, it sounds like Yahoo, it sounds like Yahweh, it's at the root, it sounds like Om. Whatever, different streams put a different particular articulation on it, but it is, you dissolve into that sound and you hear it as Su, and you hear it and you become that, and it's like the secret of God that bridges the infinite, formless, and the present moment. So that's why it's such a central sound in Sufism. But I wanted to go back to what the letter that I got, which he said he'd been doing his journaling, and just to kind of give a sense of what some people are working with, and he said that he had really kind of been floored by the practices on Zaval that we had done last time, because he never really looked into his breath in that way. Then he said he really learned from his practice that he needed to start every day with forgiveness, with the forgiveness practice, because, and I thought, well, that's really a great insight to have gotten through working with the breath, and that you really see, okay, my core issue here is self-worth. And I need to address that first before I can do anything else. So there is this practice which is so primary in this way that I thought I would give to people as one way of going into it. And that is Ya Halim, Ya Ghafur. Ya Halim, Ya Ghafur. Ya Halim is the love which includes forgiveness. It's accepting love, it's forgiving love, it is a love that you need to be able to receive for yourself. And right into that place where you haven't felt seen and accepted and loved, or right into your very vibrational core. And then to do Ya Ghafur with it says it goes, this love goes right to the place that you thought was unforgivable in you. This forgiveness touches this place that you thought was unforgivable. And so, I mean, let's just do this for a minute at the beginning, as if this person were here and had talked about his journal, and I made a suggestion about a practice that might be a way for those like him to continue, to work with. And this is to say these two names, and then for a few moments, and then to breathe out Ya Halim and feel this gentle, soothing, healing, forgiving love moving in you, awakening in you, flowing to you, and breathe in when you inhale Ya Ghafur, and take in that forgiveness that goes to the core place where you have, in some traumatic way, identified with yourself as something that is not fully worthy, or that's deficient in some way, and to take that Ghafur right into there. So we'll say maybe 10 times, Ya Halim, Ya Ghafur. 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 Now continuing, breathing out Ya Halim, breathing in Ya Ghafur, and really getting into the inner side of it now, the feeling side of it, opening yourself up to these qualities, taking it right in and feeling the forgiveness and love, acceptance. Just a few more words of Hazrat Khan here on these lessons on use of the power of mind. Psychic power must be used after having been collected. Therefore, the desire of healing and of magnetizing should be kept aside until the power is developed so that it will overflow, and that at the time is the time to make use of it. Otherwise, instead of helping others, the psychic drains themselves. The best vehicle that gives expression to this power are the eyes. The psychic first drills the eyes and makes them accustomed to operate in one direction in which they may desire them to work. The glance of the psychic must become, when required, as the sharp knife of the surgeon, and when required it should work as gently as a powder puff. Until this control is gained, the psychic may help some and harm some, not knowing what helped and what harmed. The tips of the fingers of the psychic and the palm also must become the means of directing the power. The whole being of the psychic becomes a magnet. The great psychics have a healing effect even in the soles of their feet. It is therefore that an Eastern disciple prides themselves on being even as dust under the feet of their guide. Psychic power is a power of mind, and it is repose of mind that develops it. In other words, stillness of mind. Activity of mind lessens the power. A person who thinks more, who is always absorbed in imaginations, who worries more, fears, doubts, or becomes anxious about anything, loses this power. Of course, the mind should not always be still, for lack of activity also destroys power. But one must be able to exercise the mind by thought and to still the mind by the will. One must be able to exercise the mind by thought and still the mind by the will. This gives health to the mind, and thereby psychic power is developed. The breath is the principal thing in life, which absorbs the real nourishment for both body and mind. The principal thing in life, which absorbs the real nourishment for both body and mind. So the breath is the vehicle of absorbing nourishment for body and mind. The breath absorbs from the sphere nourishing properties for both mind and body. Therefore, there's no psychic who has developed their power without the development of the breath. A person is not equally gifted with power and inspiration. These two are like eyes, two hands or two wings, two eyes, two hands, two wings, which are not equal in strength. Therefore, one finds that most inspirational people lack power, and most powerful people lack inspiration. And it is the constant striving of the Sufi to balance the two. The reason of this is that power is grosser. It produces a mist, so that the intelligence is confused. If the mist is cleared, the power is cleared too, and then inspiration comes. And one more from the lessons on sadhana, or attainment. The secret of all attainment is centered in reserve. This is the same thing again. The secret of all attainment is centered in reserve, spiritual or material. When a person has told his or her plans to others, they've let out the energy that they should have kept as a reservoir of power for the accomplishment of their object. A thing unspoken is alive in the mind, and when spoken, it's dead. The more valuable your object, the more it must be guarded, as all precious things need strong guarding. When a person tells others of their plan, each one looks at it from their point of view. Some understand, some do not understand. Some have a sympathetic point of view, and some take an unfavorable attitude toward it. And every person's attitude has something to do with your life and with your affairs, and if you have wholeheartedly engaged yourself in the accomplishment of a plan, many outside influences can hinder it. The teaching, "Be wise as a serpent," may be interpreted, "Be quiet as a serpent." It is quietude that gives wisdom and power. The thought held in mind speaks to the mind of another, but the thought spoken out most often only reaches the ears of a person. Every plan has a period of development, and if you have power over your impulse, by retaining the thought silently in mind, you allow the plan to develop and to take all necessary changes that it may take for its culmination. But when the impulse expresses the thought, it is, so to speak, puts out the flame, thus hindering the development of the plan. The wise speak with their mind many times before they speak about it to anybody. Well, this Mershid Sam puts it this way: peace is power. By having, and peace comes from not being worried, not knowing that you have to, oh, I got to do all this, I got to do all this. No, you say, okay, I'm staying right here in the breath, one thing at a time. I'm at ease. You know, I'm practicing this peacefulness in the midst of activity. And in this way, I don't have to express each thought. I don't have to express my impulse. I can feel the reserve here that comes from letting that impulse rest in peace, and then build up wisdom around it. So that when I do express it, it's not just going to be venting at the dentist or venting at this or that. It's going to have strength of my wise purpose behind it as well. So by having the reserve not to rise to the impulse through cultivating the breath, and then and at the same time building up one's capacity of life force, of magnetism around, not only in general for your good health, but in general around anything you want to accomplish. You know, by first spending the energy, you stay with it. You know, I've been working on visualizing a process of drawing people into involvement in Mershid Sam's, in writing a biography of Mershid Sam. You know, I've been gestating with it for a good while, you know, feeling into it, you know, not just making a, you know, premature kind of expression of it. And so now I feel like, okay, now I've come to a place with it where we can, where I can bring it out with strength and wisdom at the same time. And this works all the time through all of our endeavors. Once we realize that, you know, to work from this place where we can bring a kind of a peacefulness, a reserve around our need to express thought, express emotion, and so then we know we can trust it when it comes, because we have gathered enough inner sense of it that we then can let that power come out within it. No longer makes misty or foggy the terrain, because, you know, our focus, we have our focus really clear. We live to try and understand ourselves better in these teachings. We're really at a point in our work where we're trying to truly explore our relationship with an illuminated soul. This is right at the heart of the Sufi path. And it's right at the heart of the dances, as you can see. I mean, if we get into a dance, there's a level at which you can get into a dance like the one we just did, for example, where you feel we are the body of Tara, and we have the powers of Tara, so then we really can aspire for all beings to be happy and all beings to be liberated, and, you know, for tremendous possibilities of unfoldment. And this is, you know, we become one by a merger of heart. And we become one by love with the source. But the source, to cultivate this love, we need to feel it in a particular form, because we are formed. We are the aggregates of qualities. So if we can see that perfection taking a form that we can see, which is perfect. I know, I can't remember which movie it was on the life of the Dalai Lama, but I know it was one he consulted with. And there's this really touching moment when, as a child, he's being educated and he's being told about Tara. And he says to the Lama, who is his teacher, he says, is she real or imaginary? And he says, oh, she's real. And you knew he put that in there. I mean, you knew he wanted that in the film because, you know, I mean, these cosmic archetypes are real. You know, the Shiva, Tara, these beings, Kuan Yin, these are real. They don't have, you know, you don't have to trace, you know, that they lived here in San Francisco at this day and time, like, you know, or whatever, you know. I mean, because there's two kinds of beings. One who appear first in the cosmic realm, you know, through the grace of the Creator and the concentration of beings who have idealized this being. You know, and then that being becomes a source of emanations in, you know, and takes incarnation in a certain sense because it becomes embodied. And so this is all part of, you know, the amazing thing in our Sufi path is we are given this freedom to find the form of perfection that we can really give our heart to. We're not just said, okay, you have to accept this image of God, or you have to accept this particular incarnation as being the one. So this gives us a lot of, because we want to bring forth our sense of perfection, our sense of that ideal power, because when we can feel it and the reality, we make God a reality, God makes us the truth, an icon says. And how do we make God a reality? By opening to the ideal, to the perfection in a perfect soul, who we might have to imagine, but who we give. I mean, you say, okay, Tara. Now, Tara's been focused on for so long as a perfect soul, and who has all these powers, and you can invoke her in all these different ways, you know, white Tara, green Tara, all the different forms of Tara. But it's all the one God taking these different forms, or thatness, or Buddha nature taking these forms. But we need this vehicle to connect with. And in the dance, if you begin to feel this way, like in the Om Mani Padme Hum dance, you're feeling like you're Chenrezig, who is turning, you know, with us this wheel for the liberation of all beings when we're chanting Om Mani Padme Hum. So this is the way, you know, Murshid says in those lessons on Tasawwuri Murshid that we were studying last time, this, you know, which is right at the heart of the whole inner path as far as I can see. And that is, we gain this unity of being, which is God, through these stages of merging in our hearts with the oneness in different forms, what we find beautiful, what we can surrender to. So I wanted to explore some of this, how people are going about this process of exploring how to get into this. And, you know, and I thought I would make that easy by giving myself as an example of a particular Rasul, how one goes about exploring, you know, my own exploration of it and how it deepens my relationship with him. And this is just meant by way of a kind of, how do you feel into it? Okay, we have the story that history gives us, we have the various accounts in the different scriptures which are interpreted in different ways. We have all of the practices or whatever that are attributed to them. We have all those things. But how do we get our heart into it? How do we, you know, where do we find? We need to look into the story. For example, looking into the story of Abraham. Abraham is called the friend of God. But why? What's the quality of Abraham? You know, that makes me interested in Abraham. He's Wali Allah. He's the friend of God. He sees God. So what does that mean? You know, so exploring the meaning that is in being the friend of God. Well, in his relationships, he is seeing God underneath all beings. And that's true if you look at the historical story, because the idolaters that, he'd had to leave home because he was bringing the religion of monotheism, that all these different powers are part of one power, one being, one reality, not just separated things that can be at war with each other. And this was the message of the whole of the monotheism of Western religion, and so, I mean, here he was in exile from his own home, but he didn't judge his father when he left. He just sighed, as the Quran says. He sighed. And, and just felt, sympathy for him, that I could never convince him, that there's no point in fighting. The only thing to do is to love and leave. And to let go of it all with this sigh, So this, when you start getting into, you starting to feel into the nature of his heart, and then you read in when we were doing the book on the 99 names, and the story of Abraham comes up in several places, but one where he's the example of one whose heart attracts people. In these lessons we're learning, you build up magnetism of heart, and then all these things amazing happen around you because you built up this life force in your own being. This is all part of it. But what if you become an extraordinary being like Abraham or Mevlana, and everybody's attracted to you? What is it in your heart that attracts people? And so in the Quran there's this story about the homing pigeons, which are put at the four corners. They told him, God says, okay, this is a test, put the four homing pigeons at the four corners of the world, and then call them back to you. And and that's the quality of heart. And he was kind to his wives. He respected his first wife. He didn't. He respected Hagar, but she didn't have the same status as his first wife, so he had to respect Sarah. So then he had to take them ultimately away. And what did he do? He gave a tremendous blessing to Ishmael and Hagar that becomes the whole basis of the transmission of Islam. That goes into that community, that teaching of oneness that is carried over into the Kaaba and so forth. He didn't try to say, no, she's right, no. He just said, okay, I'm going to follow this, but this is all God happening. Similarly, when he got this inner sign, to sacrifice, it was either Isaac or Ishmael, depending on whether you read the Quran or the Bible. A lot of sense, it makes much more sense to think he was going to sacrifice Ishmael, you see, because after Isaac had come, then he had a child by his first wife. So but the way in which he did it, it's kind of like, okay, that's defined as insanity, right? You get a voice talking to you and says, "Kill your child for me." That's about the definition of really going off the deep end. At the same time, imagine that someone who has this intimate sense of divine presence, who knows it as a loving presence, who has never been betrayed by that love, and who is themselves a vehicle of love, is given in the same way that he's gotten all this other to surrender to this. And so, it becomes a test for him of his surrender, and it becomes a test for the child to willingly surrender. And yet at the last instant, the ram is substituted, or the beast, there's a beast there to sacrifice instead of the human sacrifice. In other words, giving a message to humanity to go beyond this human sacrifice and war and conflict, but to trust God even right into the depth of it. So this was always a very difficult thing to say. How could you have enough faith not to, to believe that and not be crazy, But anyway, I was able to get close to Abraham in that way so that I could feel like, okay, I've never tried to do the walk of Abraham or to feel Tasawwuri Abraham in that fashion, but I feel like, okay, now I can go into a state where I breathe and I begin to feel these qualities of heart, and and then this being becomes someone that is also there for you in your life. It doesn't just have to be one. And then you can bring it forward and you feel like you're walking in this way, And sing the sacred in everybody. So that just, it doesn't have to be a walk. It just has to be a place like what you were saying when you go to bed, or when you go, when you call on Mary. And I'd like, if you could just speak into this for a moment for us, so that we get a sense of what drew you into being able to feel this.
I've been in a very intense time with my husband's health, and we've been a couple times with paramedics, called the paramedics and gone by ambulance into the hospital, and it's felt very much up and down, like we have no idea what's going to happen. But during that time, you had put up this idea, and really, Mother Mary came to me. I did not choose. But her words were, "Let it be so according to thy will." And those words I hung on and have hung on, but especially in the beginning when this was all coming down, it was like, okay, we don't know what's going to happen. But when you think about her life and what she bore, first the Christ child and then a crucifixion, then, And then the song has definitely been there too. Let it be, let it be according to thy will, but let it be. So, I don't know, I've never studied her. I have, and actually at one point, there was a time when she kind of merged with Mother Krishnabai, who I did get to meet. And so it was the quality of Mother Krishnabai also, and who I saw in the flesh. So, but I don't even know what this person looks like. And in a way, I don't want to go research it because there's something. I would like to at some point, but we'll see when that is.
And this is the whole thing. God says, "I am as my lover imagines me to be." So, and the Holy Mother has so many forms, but, when she comes in a particular form, all perfection is in that form, whether it's Tara or Mary or Kuan Yin or Mother Krishnabai, or, because it is the one and the same being that is manifesting, but we need something that we can feel close, that has a personhood for us, that we can unite in that close kind of feeling as a human being, because we are relational beings. We live in relationship. So I was moved by what you said earlier, and I just wanted to, I hope you don't mind drawing you out. And I don't know if, because as people concentrate on this aspect of things and you breathe into it in your meditations, I'm hoping that, there'll be inspirations that will come for you, whether in the sphere of dance or in the sphere of music or a walk or whatever. That is what I want to draw out here, so that we can maybe, if there's some things that are coming up for you, that we can, I can give you some feedback. I can suggest some practices or things to do to bring it out. Or if not, then I'll say you drop down one level, so to speak, which is to say, instead of a being who embodies these attributes, that we find our oneness and awaken to a quality that we need in our life. And that is where we use the different breaths of the different wazaif in order for people to do that. And this is not about getting it right. It's about finding something that will be a path for you to take.
Well, I'll say along that line too, that Ya Rauf has been such a comforting, and it goes along with Mother Mary, just the gentlest, tenderest love, soft as a wet feather. It's, if we get to choose the wazifa, it's chosen me also.
Yeah, this is good. And the same, for Abraham you have Ya Wali. And that's the sense God is the closest friend, the most intimate relationship. So would anyone like to, Nizamuddin?
So for me, the component, I've had this feeling like in back of me is like, or I guess it's the way to look at it, interior-wise, is there's presence, right? And so I've had some sense of it being Hazrat Nayak Khan. Actually was working to attune with you in that space, but so I found with the breathing practice that definitely there's a certain point where things tune up to a place where I have some connection, and it's not always very, I feel presence, or at one point it came to where I just felt this really deep heart place where I said, oh, so this is a whole other way to be grounded, just from, just seeing that if you're like deep enough in that heart space that, there's a grounding just from that. So I guess part of it is then, it's still kind of like undefined as far as like really, but every time it seems like, except, if I'm like in that place where I'm really having to process a lot of stuff to get through, then it can take a while, or maybe it's not quite as there. But it seems like if I just work enough, in different ways to where things form up, then I have some sense of that every time, and then as far as it being totally defined, and then there've been a couple of times where, one time where I felt I was in a certain state and, like an impulse of you showed up, and it was like, okay, just do the breath and just, take this other stuff, and it made a difference. In another place, it was a Nayak Khan showing up and I ignored, and moved on with it. But, like I said, okay, so there it is, there's the information, but so, as far as, I guess that thing about how, to move into being, for me right now it's just, well, I'll just continue to attune that way and just see how it shapes up, but that's my experience.
Yeah, well, that's very clear, and what I would reflect back on that is that what you're describing is this process that we do go through, and often on retreat, where we are making a place, an accommodation in our heart for the spirit of guidance, and the spirit of guidance will come in a particular form. It may come in different forms, but it comes in a particular way. It comes with a kind of inner confidence, there's a visceral quality to it for each person, and maybe it comes with an inner sense of light or smell or whatever for somebody, but a texture, but it comes in a way that you recognize when it comes in this way that it is from the spirit of guidance. And it can take any one of your friends' forms. It can take the form of someone you don't know. It can take animal forms or whatever. But if it comes in that way, you respect it and you listen to it, because that there's the one teacher who's the guiding spirit of all souls, who takes all forms. And so this is a very good place to work from. The only thing I don't have any criticism of that. I just think it's worthwhile to keep considering if there is a particular being that you would so be willing to, you wouldn't mind disappearing in their being and having a sense of awareness, but being them, so to speak, being in that state with all that you know, but all a part of their presence. So I mean, when I think of the beings that I would trust that much to go with, there's probably not a lot, even among the lists of illuminated souls, you might say, yeah, well, okay, I bow to this one, but I don't know if I would want to merge with Kali or something, Yeah, you wanted to say something?
Astaghfirullah, first of all, because I'm just a mess inside trying to figure out where I am with it. As we're talking about these images, we use names of archetypal figures. And I'm noticing, I've been sitting here with this question, and I don't really know where to go with it exactly, but when you take Mary, instead of thinking of her as Mother Mary, if you think of her as Big Mama, it, like the name sometimes, like images of males as father is very formal, but if I tried to think of an image and it was a daddy, or a Papa Ramdas is not Father Ramdas, you think of the difference.
Yeah.
The words are really potent here, and sometimes the way we apply it makes it more distant and harder to access.
Very true.
It was Daddy Ramdas. It's similar to Papa Ramdas. It's not quite as formal. And this whole, when you call out, when the baby cries out, Mama, they're not, some say mother, but there's a way that we're actually making it more intimate, but in some ways ourselves, but also the presence, because I've had the experience of Mama showing up in my life, and it felt like Mama. It was came through Yemaya for me, and then but it also transformed in that same time as Mary, and it was the great Mama, the big Mama, loving me like a big mother hen. Maybe it's because I'm from the country and I know what it's like to be the hen underneath that. I mean, I've seen that chick underneath the mama's wing, and those images are much more tender and accessible to me than the formal language.
Yeah, well, that's the way we have. I'm glad you shared that, Perry, because that's really the way we all have to find our way in. We have to find the images that awaken our real feeling, and not where we're not distanced from in some way. That's why we need to make our own prayer. We need to make our own image of God. We need to make our own sense of perfection and craft a sense of relationship to that perfection that is beautiful, shape it like an artist so that, the forms of our expression of the beloved are beautiful to us.
And then I'll say one more thing and I'll stop. It's just that Jesus never comes to me I don't think of Jesus as Father. The image of Father, because he's been separated in the theologies. He's the Son, of course, but he's also sort of like a big brother or something. He's not like, the image of him is not like Father. So somehow that term still stays foreign to me. And one of the ways I feel like Jesus' presence shows up in my life as one of my archetypal figures. As you were talking, that's what made me speak, is that I realized there's no father image with Jesus. Whatever it is, I don't even know what to call it, but the presence is not the presence of. It's more like quality, like the friend.
It's a friend. It's a friendly presence for you, and that's what you should cultivate. And you should look into that aspect of his being that draws out that response in you, and that, because once you make it a reality by that process, and the fact that what you're doing is real makes it the truth in you. And so this is, so that's exactly how we need to go about it. But each in our own way. And that's why I wanted to have this kind of a discussion, because, I feel like, having a class of this length of time gives you the space to really take some time and not to just cut through a lot of this and go into, okay, we're just going to do this and we're just going to do that. Because it's all about each one of us finding a way to idealize what's beautiful, the beloved, and such that our heart is open to it and we give ourselves fully to it in loving surrender. Yes?
Does it have to be outside of me? I mean...
No, it isn't. It's never outside. Nothing is outside of you ever. But you're considering it to be something that is outside of you in the sense of another being. Yeah.
Because I've had an experience, and I had self-esteem issues up the wazoo, so that aside, I've had an experience of myself as that which I see.
That is perfect.
And it's a very precious, small time I had with this being that is me. And it's occasionally come to me with a voice, very rarely, that I can trust. And I'd like to find her again. I mean, that's who I would like.
That is your real self, basically, as we would put it in Sufi terms. We talk about fana and baka. And fana is the process we're talking about in terms of right here in this class. We fana fi murshid, fana tasawwuri murshid, fana fi rasul. Fana meaning, okay, I'm going to empty out my sense of self, or as an icon put it in those papers, I'm going to clear this mirror that is of my soul, so that I can fully take the reflection of perfection right into it, that I am focusing, turning this mirror toward the Divine Mother and Mary, and then I'm going to feel, because I have no resistance, my soul will take that in and know that that is in itself. It's not any different from it, because so that's the way fana works. At a certain point in the process, you are basically, you might say, reborn into a sense of self which is not disconnected from the source, and which is your true nature. That's your true nature. That's your Buddha nature. In other words, every one of us, if we could look through eons of time, would be a Buddha. It's millennium hence, because it's our true nature. And so that being that knows its own perfection and comes from that sense of selfness, it doesn't have to empty and then go, because it's constantly in that place of connection. That's the real self. And that's what that's called self-realization in the Sufi terminology, or baka. But it's, you've had an experience of it, so I feel permitted. I say, okay, you can talk about it. Now this is definitely the greatest thing you can draw from that is relax. It's already, you already know that your essence is perfect in a way that you could never deny. That no reason could ever convict. It would be, you know it directly from your experience, and you hold that before you as what's real. So that's perfect. At the same time, we have the opportunity of cultivating this kind of relationship with the illuminated souls, and not just simply one. You know, yes, you can pick whichever one you want from this tremendous menu, but we say in our prayer, and many other names and forms known and unknown to the world, you know, as Rama and Sita, as, you know, Radha and Krishna, as Mary Magdalene, and, you know, I mean, and known and unknown, I mean, so there, it widens our sense of the perfection that we can draw into ourself and know as our real self. But again, like with Ms. Amity, I think this is a perfect, you know, this is something that's very meaningful to work with. But you need to have a relationship with it. You need to cultivate a relationship with that beloved in the same way that you would cultivate a relationship with Mary or Jesus or Krishna, you see. You know, go to it with surrender and devotion and feeling of wanting to merge your heart with it and give up what in you is so worried and concerned and lacks self-esteem in the reality that you know is there. Yeah. Yes, Sundari.
I recently was really blessed to be able to see Amma both here in California and then over in the East Coast. And what was really interesting about it for me was that getting to do it a second time, I didn't really have as much of an agenda because I was so, you know, so worried about getting something out of it. And the whole thing about going up and am I standing right and am I doing this right and am I getting what I need and me. And I always get very nervous around teachers, and whenever I've gone in front of Amma, it's like I'm gonna pee in my pants or something, and it's just so uncomfortable. And last time on the West Coast, I'm like doing the alternate nostril breath and trying to like calm down. And this time, I just had this sense of, you know, you already did that. You already got the hug. This is bonus. and it just occurred to me, you know, in whatever moment after she had given the speech, that, you know, it wasn't about me at all. and in that moment, I just, you know, all the nervousness just went away completely, and I went up just so grounded, and so, like, I could see all the chaos, and I could just get the hug, and it just didn't matter. And I was able to, you know, beyond that, it just kept coming, because what I was able to do was take these practices and bring you and bring everything into it, and all the things that I've been trying to, like, kind of work out, like, I don't get this, I don't get, you know, I just, like, sort of all brought them all there, and I've been using Amma in my practice, and it was just, like, so much easier to just ask and receive. And
Yeah. So what did you learn from that?
a lot.
Yeah, I can see, yeah.
I mean, I already know about myself that I worry about a lot that I don't need to worry about. And I suspect that'll be an ongoing thing, to just let go of that worry. But I actually, ever since the last time I saw you, I do have less worry, but I almost, like, try to bring it back.
Well, it's a familiar thing, you know. Sometimes I think, well, what am I missing? Oh, yeah, I got something like familiar words.
But what I really got was a sense of, it was a sense of a greater purpose.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's so beautiful.
And and just, I mean, I was really struggling with trying to make the practice into something that was meaningful for me, and I mean, I really have just, sit and struggle with it. Can I do it this way? Can I do it that way? Can I do it this way, that way? And a lot of it had to do with just the flow of energy. Like, how can I bring in energy and let it flow out of me in a way that makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to find different ways to make it make sense for me. And the funny thing was, the answer that I got when I was sitting there, it wasn't really so much, I mean, I'm used to thinking in yogic terms, in like energy channels and so forth, and finding that flow, but it was, oh no, it's not channels, it's like everything, like take it in through your whole body, all your pores, everything, and let it out through everything, your actions and your walk and your smile and your speech and everything.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I wanted to just, it suggests to me to read this one thing from our next practice assignment that I'm going to ask everyone to do. And that is, sorry. Oh yeah, here we go. I'll just read this. In the place of the short supplementary meditation practices, which were the ones with the Hu Allah and the Ahad Samad, for the upcoming month, we'll take 5 to 10 minutes daily to breathe, bringing our heart and our vision into empathetic oneness with an illuminated soul. As this living prayer of the heart becomes our breath, we'll turn our attention to the world around us, near and far, and be an instrument of healing and light. The two supplemental meditations that we've been doing should now be considered to be optional. My suggestion is to choose one of these to do once a week. But I want to come back to this, so this is like in the spirit of what you're saying. It allows one to have a bigger sense of purpose than one's own individual ray of purpose, which when you look at all the rays of all the wills of all the beings around is just so small. And so by feeling, at this point, united with, for me, I usually start with Murshid Sam, because when I get confused in life, I go to that, that's my touchstone, I go to that place, and in me that stands for Murshid Sam, so to speak, and I find clarity, but to feel, what would it be like for 5 minutes to just, as St. Paul says, we put on the awareness of Christ. We have the awareness of Christ. Just put it on like a robe. And, don't let it go to your ego. It's not about your ego. It's not about you, like you say. You put it on, and, but you have that sense, you still have that sense of efficacy, of will, of being an active force within that, and so you can and that's in the breath, and you can direct that attention so that you then feel a vehicle for healing and love and harmony in the world. But it's giving us an opportunity. So how about we just take a minute to reflect on, if there's not any one being that comes to mind, I suggest to take Hasra Naikan or Murshid Sam. But if there is one that comes to your heart, take that one. And let's just take a minute to bring ourselves into a long, refined breath and to feel an empathetic oneness with that illuminated soul that we trust and are willing to put on their mantle of awareness and merge with it in our heart so that we can serve humanity in this inner way. Is there someone that would like to bring something up around your own concentration with an illuminated soul, or if not, then I'm going to, yeah, okay.
My, what I think we chose each other is Mary. At a certain point in my life, when I really needed some help, I had the experience of being held under her will when I needed healing in a real way, just like that chick underneath the hand, you know. And then I called on her when I was very worried about my child, and I had a grown-up child, and then I had to hear her or feel her experience of having let go of her child in the crucifixion, that this was something that she had to let go. It was just life force moving through, and this is the story that was told, and so this is a story. Then I attended a class with Miranisa, who was bringing forth Christian mysticism, and I learned about the Orantes. The Orantes is the Mary who holds the door open, not only for herself, but for all beings. And this is the mudra, or the space that you take when you hold your body in this particular, like this. You become the channel for this. And I have experienced that in the practices we do at the Kanka every day. And at other times when I feel a need, or I need to connect, I do this, and it just comes through. And I think there's Miriam, and there's the Magdalene, and these are all, in personality aspects, they are within me. I mean, we all have so many in our persona stories or whatever. And I guess what I'm hearing, I know what I'm hearing today, is that whatever way it comes through, take it and see what it is, and relate to it in whatever way I can relate to it, and allow it. It's just that being willing to receive from something that's really, really omnipresent. And allow it, and not judge it, because as soon as I let something, I can feel the contraction, I can feel the inner stopping it, and if I just let go, then time goes, and I can move through my house in this, just things kind of swoop along, and then it's over. Back to whatever it is, dishes, I don't know. So I guess it's not so much that part of me would really like to know, well, who is the Magdalene? What was that experience, or the story, or what was real, or does it matter? I don't know if it matters. And so I kind of...
I think to explore something about the Magdalene, you really have to go to the Gnostic scriptures, because the scriptures that are in the canon of the Bible, there's the familiar stories about Magdalene, but in the Gnostic scriptures, which were recovered in the last 100 years, buried under the sands, and Magdalene, it's very clear she was included among the disciples. She was given the same rank, or even higher, among all of the apostles, and so her knowledge was tremendous. And there's she appears in the Gospel according to Thomas and a number of the Gnostic scriptures, quite a few of them. And so really, someone who wants to explore that mystical union through Mary Magdalene really would need to not only reflect on the biblical stories, and people have used her so much as a projectile for their own stuff, there's an opera now about Mary Magdalene.
Yes.
You went to see it, I don't know.
So I wasn't at your birthday party.
Yeah, but I don't know what aspect, but people use it as a way of exploring a lot of issues, but I think all that notwithstanding, and I'm sure that was probably based mostly on the scripture references.
The newer finds, yes.
The newer ones. Yeah, okay, that's great. I didn't know that. I'd like to see that sometime. But so people are now mining this material about Mary Magdalene. She's coming more into the consciousness of people, and I think it won't just be the person who had all these devils cast out of her who was so, and who became purified through Jesus' presence. It's almost like the Milarepa story, because in the sense Milarepa was bad. He was a baddie, he killed somebody, and yet he did enough practice and went through enough purification in his lifetime to become a fully awakened human being, And Mary Magdalene, she was at the dregs of the society, so to speak. And all these demons were cast out of her. And she becomes the most, the one who has the best inner vision and clarity and knowledge of all of the disciples. So it's our own creative process, really, in exploring the one that we're being asked to investigate that is important too, to be creative about it. You wanted to say?
My experience with the Christ was a joy that cannot be touched by death.
Yes.
And that was my sole experience with the Christ.
Well, if you stay with that, you're in good shape. The joy that cannot be touched by death. I like that.
That was my experience.
Yeah.
And everybody in the house got up and started dancing.
Uh-huh.
I said, oh.
Insa?
Well, we speak of Tasawwur and Murshid and working with one form.
Mm-hmm.
And last month, a gentleman talked about his dilemma of picking one form.
Mm-hmm.
And I have that dilemma, and I was sitting doing morning practice and just feeling very frustrated about Tasawwur and Murshid. So I've received blessings through different blessing streams. And very active, having to pick one just brought up a lot of conflict.
Well, that tells you something about your own self that you should look at. But what I'd like to say about it is there's no wrong choice. You make a choice and you say, okay, for this month or for this week or for this meditation, but you're not making a lifetime commitment to this path or that path or this path that it seems to be defined by choosing Jesus or Muhammad or Mary or whomever. And that's not the point of it at all. And we want to really explore effacement and oneness with many, many illuminated souls, because in doing so, we reflect that illumination ourselves. And we become an aspect of the spirit of guidance, which is really, if you could imagine it, the gigantic mirror of living soul that absorbs all the rays of illumination of all the illuminated beings and carries it forward in history.
Well, thank you for that, because I finally said, forget it. And I just started singing all the names of these blessing streams because I couldn't choose. And then whoever wants to show up, that's great. I'm not going to say you're not so-and-so.
Well, because apparently you feel fine about all of them. You don't have any reservation about giving your devotion and your heart and your inner empathy with them. So for some people, it's hard to even find one that they can trust. So that's why I'm going to have this discussion, so you can see there's so many different ways, as Rumi says, to bow and kiss the ground. There's so many different ways to approach our relationship to God in form, in a form, which is how we see the personal God, God in form. So we're seeing God in the qualities, that's seeing God in form. We're seeing God in illuminated souls, that's seeing God in form. And then as we get more adept at seeing it, then we begin to be able to see it even when it's not so visible. In unilluminated souls, whose essence is illumination, but who don't get it yet, you know. For example, namely ourselves. And you know, so it widens our perspective that way. But you have to keep, and I wanted to respond to something that was said earlier about the planning, because it just came into my head. Where the long refined breath is useful in planning is when your mind has worked out the plan, and you know, and you worked it out, and now you need to look at it and see, is this something I want to give my heart to? Is this wise? What is this? This choice that I make here in the plan, is that, which way should it go? You know, to be able to bring wisdom to bear on what the mind has produced, you know, in having that reserve of that peacefulness of looking at it in that long breath, so then you can apply your insight into it. You're not having to work out all, it's not about working out the details. It's about getting a sense of throwing the light. Does my soul rise with life when I look at this choice? Or does it contract and feel somehow less than? This is where that kind of meditative breath and focus really is an essential part of planning. So I didn't want to leave that unsaid. Rakiba.
So, mostly I'm just really ordinary and just, you know, I'm like really shy. But in this experience, the last experience, I've got a feeling of heart. And I became Jesus, which has happened before to me. And the first, I guess I'm very tactile because the first thing I feel is the robe. And then I grow tall. And I'm looking out, and I'm very quiet. And then I feel a sadness. And I think this is not my guide. I don't need, I have a big heart. I am sad. That's sort of who I am. So I went to, or they came, and I don't know which name, but the dancer in the Shiva, Vishnu, you know,
Nataraja, Shiva in the form of Nataraja.
So I became Nataraj, and I was flames, and I was still really tall, but I was also dancing, and that was where I stayed, and that is what I need.
Yeah. Fantastic. Alhamdulillah, how the spirit of guidance works to direct you in that way, and then and such that you know it and you can be it.
But it's like, so I can go to these places, and I can feel this guidance. I feel God's voice. I hear God's voice. I feel guided, and I have my life. And you know, I just feel like I'd like to go to a nunnery because it's so hard in ordinary life to find the fullness of who I am.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, you know, and we have no vehicle for this in our culture. In Indian culture, for example, as people enter the last, you know, the different stages of life, it's very normal for people to want to become, I heard you say, I wish there was a monastery for me, you know? I mean, there must be somewhere a monastery for me. You know, I mean, it's very natural that people say, okay, I'll leave all this concerns of transient things behind and cut them to a minimum. Just go into the state of bliss or meditation or inner reflection and relationship, and that's very natural, and their society provides for it as a natural stage. We're having to develop in our own society ways of accommodating this kind of maturing process. You know, because it's not going to be the path for everyone. Someone will want to take that into their life stream more, and someone else will want to say, this is my time now to go into Kilvat. You know, I'm going to be on more or less Kilvat and coming out for this or that purpose. And these are both entirely fine goals. It's just we are committed to lives and we're involved in relationships and we have obligations, and that's why it's such a big deal. At a certain point in Indian culture, a person had that freedom to say, okay, now I am indifferent to all that. Now I take sannyas, I become a sannyasin, and I am only interested in God. And I'm, you know, and maybe, you know, even doing it in the extreme manner that Papa Ram Dass did it, where, you know, you have nothing. You're going around with nothing, but you know, you got a robe and a bowl, and your Ram Nam on your lips, but you know, I mean, there are ways that we could shape our future such that we have communities where people can come and go into those kinds of settings and lead meaningful lives. You know, I mean, we have these beautifully assistance homes for people to go through the stages of dying in and living and then dying in, you know, I mean, but you know, what's being worked towards conscious dying and really, you know, meditative movement towards, you know, everybody gets more meditative as they approach the end in that sense. I mean, things fall away. I mean, people I mean, my mother, you know, I think of her, you know, she said, Melvin, I always thought you'd been wrong about everything, but I could never win an argument. Said, but now I've come around to your opinion that things are not important, love is what's important. And it took her to be 90 years old before she could say that. Yeah, she did, you know, and it was, but I mean, it's, you know, there's a natural sense in which things fall away. So we just have to find creative ways of coping with it. But for now, I want to give you some practices and ways so that you can strengthen your hold in the world at the same time as developing your capacity for these inner experiences, so that the world is not so much of a downer in that way.
And I have found Al-Anon to be extremely wonderful. It's a wonderful community, and even though I've done a lot of work on myself, there's something that happens in this community that it is God's work. We are, you know, all aspects. And so that feels like really grounded. And community, I feel, is important. And you guys are important. It's really nice to be a part of a community, you know, that I can see. And, you know, I'm glad we're getting the phone numbers. Yeah. So anyway, so I just wanted you to know that in that sense, I'm even chairperson right now of our group, and in that sense, it makes me feel very grounded. Not powerful, but able to come from heart and groundedness that, you know, I feel that I am that. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I really appreciate people are sharing so openly their stories here, and and we'll give you a chance to whatever before it all goes out. But I do appreciate the sense of trust that's here, because it's okay to speak about things if you have a circle of support and trust that is that wishes you well and is not sitting in judgment of you, whatever it is that you bring forth. And that's what people are getting here, and that's what I want to create, because that makes for a Sangha, and that makes for that kind of support that we all need on the path. So, is anyone else who wants to join in this conversation? Yeah.
Well, I truly believe in the spirit of guidance in my life, but it came to me one time in the form of a bird, and that bird was one of your birds, Hermes.
Yeah.
And I was with Hermes when he was dying, and I used to take care of him, and I never met anybody who would look at me with so much trust and gratitude and love. And when my mother was dying, I said, "Don't worry, when you go, Hermes will be waiting there for you." Because when Hermes died, I felt like that was my guide when I go. I really felt that. When we buried him behind my room, I said, I've met my guide, so when I die, this bird will be singing and take me to the light. So when my mother was dying, I told her, "Don't worry, Hermes will be waiting for you, and you'll hear him singing, and he'll take you to the light with your husband." So anyway, when she passed and they took her away at 1:30 in the morning, the van door shut, and just as it started to drive off, Jamie and I were standing on the street watching, and a bird started singing. And the bird sang till dawn outside the window where we were sleeping. So I found that this experience for me isn't in the great famous God or hero or architect. It's a little tiny bird, and that when we can see that these little things in our life is always the spirit of guidance manifesting in big forms and little forms, and seeing another part of our own being. But for me, I found so much comfort in this little bird, because I said I cried more when the bird died than when my stepfather died. But it was just the love I felt for the bird, and that this bird would be waiting for me someday. That I found, I don't use him as my, when I'm meditating, as that illuminated soul, but I felt like he was an illuminated soul. It was just this tiny little cockatiel.
Yeah, and that's amazing. The soul is, the metaphor of the soul is of a bird also. The famous story in the Masnavi about the bird, that the parrot, and that the king values so much. And it's the first story, one of the first stories in the Masnavi. And he values it so much when he goes to, keeps it in the most beautiful cage and feeds it the most wonderful things. When he's going to the east, and he has he's going to bring back presents for everybody in his family. He's a king, and he goes to the bird and he says, "What would you like? This parrot is amazing. He can talk, or she can talk." And she says, "Ask if you see, go to this place and find the birds where I came from in Africa, and tell them that I'm in a cage and I want to be free, and to give me some advice." And so the king goes up and he gets all the presents, and he finds the tree in Africa, and he finds the birds, cutting a long story short, and he asks he goes, finds the most beautiful parrot, and he says, he says, I have this question from my bird, and as soon as he asks the question, the parrot on the tree falls down, dead. And then the other parrots in the tree fall down dead too. And the king is totally depressed, and he goes home, and he gives all the presents, and finally he has to face his bird, and the bird says to him, did you bring me, did you do what I asked? And the king is forced to tell him the story, and when he comes to the point in the story where the bird dies, his bird dies, and there he is, and the king really, that's what he says, we have to have the most royal funeral for this bird, and so so they prepare this great funeral, and they bring the bird's body out on the sea, and the bird flies up to the tree. And he says, don't you know that he said, what about your obligation to me, the king? He says, my first obligation is to be free. And of course it's a metaphor for the soul, to die before death, and yeah. I don't know why I told that story, but it must have been a reason. Oh, the bird of the soul, yeah. Of course, I knew Hermes, the gentlest soul you would ever want to meet. It was a handicapped bird from the beginning, so a lot of people too.
Such a big heart.
Yeah, such a big heart. And you find this in a lot of people, Down's children, for example. Yeah. Gigantic hearts, tremendous being, a soul, a force. I'm enjoying this conversation, and I think it's useful. And if there's more if someone who hasn't spoken yet would like to bring up, I'd be happy to go there. Yeah.
I just want to share that because we're having group practices at the Conca, and it's been a rather amazing process. That every day at 5:30, whoever happens to be home, which is most of us, most of the time, we have practice at 5:30, and there's this anchor that's been created. It's gone through stages of, okay, it's rote. What are the practices? Yes, we're doing them in the right order, et cetera, and just kind of pushing through them. And then there was a phase of maybe a little boredom, and then we're going to go up again. And then of late, I'd say the last, I don't know, whatever, month or whatever, there's been this great opening of creativity, where there's been a loosening up of the grip of the form, and people's individual powers and strengths and passions are arising as we each take turn leading the practice. And for me, what's amazing, and it's kind of tough, was my great-grandfather, Rabbi Isaac Schwartz, was the first rabbi in Newark, in New Jersey. And he's been coming through, and we've been having Friday night Shabbats, and I'm leading Shabbat. I don't know if I want to lead Shabbat. I've never done this, and then all of a sudden I'm leading Shabbat, and I'm singing the Shekinah, and the Shema, and then singing to the calling and the angels, and there's this whole thing going on. It's just great, and then all of it, and then my voice and the singing's like, whoa, the singing's coming out, and it's creating this wonderful Friday night event with our wine and our cheese and our food and our practice, and it's just amazing, but it really took the practices all that time to kind of brew, and then Rabbi Isaac came through. And I was asking my mother today, I don't have a picture of Rabbi Isaac. I was trying to Google him, and the picture was this big. But it's quite amazing.
Yeah. God is great. It's always greater than what we imagine, you know. I mean, what is it that an icon says in one of the lessons? He says, God. I don't want to paraphrase it. I'd rather read his actual word. Oh yeah, here it is. There's no such thing as impossible. All is possible. Impossible is made by the limitation of our capacity of understanding. Human beings, blinded by the law of nature's working, by the law of consequences, which they have known through their few years' life on earth, begins to say, this is possible and that is impossible. If they were to rise beyond limitations, their soul would see nothing but possible. And when the soul is risen high enough to see all possibility, that soul certainly has caught a glimpse of God. They say God is almighty, and I say God is all possible.
That's good.
Wow.
And you know, when you in the very first chapter of the Quran, it says, Alhamdulillah, Bismillah Rahman Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. All praise to the Rabbil, the one, the Master, the Lord, who holds Alameen in their heart all possible universes, embraces all possible realities. That's a very, you know, I mean, so nothing, no possibility is outside of that heart. They say God is almighty, and I say God is all possible. Possibility is the nature of God, and impossibility is the art of man. Man goes so far and cannot go any further. Man makes a flower out of paper, giving it as natural a color as possible, yet he says it is not possible to make it fragrant, for he has his limitations. But God, who is the maker of the flower and who is the giver of the fragrance, has all power, and human beings who are weakened by their limitedness become more and more limited the more they think of it. In this is created the spirit of pessimism. The one who is conscious of God Almighty, and who in the contemplation of God loses the consciousness of their own self, inherits the power of God. And it is in this power and belief that the spirit of optimism is born. So, and that's along the lines of the path of attainment. You need to have a positive view in order to allow yourself to succeed. If you're just so worried and pessimistic and so on, it's so hard to succeed. Yes?
I really love what he says about God as all possibility, because for many years I grappled with Muhammad as the prophet, who had X number of wives and went to war and did raids and was so different from the culture that I was used to, and I loved Buddha, who was nonviolent, and I don't know, I think it's through association with Sufis where finally the mind is finally starting to let go and open up. And why isn't it possible that someone who went to war and performed raids and had X number of wives would not be God's representative on earth? And it was a great, so these possibilities are great, liberating for that one time for me.
Well, I think it is liberating to know that, you know, it does. I just came back, God says, I am the way you imagine me to be if you love me. If you really love me, however you imagine me to be, that's the way I am. And love in the sense of finding perfection, finding devotion and beauty. So I mean, that which you can really find truly beautiful, is. So it gives way to. God is all possibilities in that sense, and but what we imagine to be, love, harmony, beauty, and so on, That's our ideal. That's the perfection we're bringing forth, that we want to make a temple for God's presence here. Let's just take a moment and hold everyone in this circle, and in the bathroom line, and the people who couldn't make it this week, the people who are connecting with us via video over in distant places, and include them in the goodwill of this moment, breathing in all directions, feeling this oneness of heart. And let's say Khatum. O Thou, who art the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, Lord of heaven and of earth, open our hearts that we may hear Thy voice, which constantly comes from within. Disclose to us Thy divine light, which is hidden in our souls, that we may know and understand life better. Most merciful and compassionate God, give us Thy great goodness. Teach us Thy loving forgiveness. Raise us above the distinctions and differences which divide. Send us the peace of Thy divine Spirit, and unite us all in Thy perfect being.